Welcome to Budapest once again for another round of Formula One action. Historically, a good race for first-time victories, with Button, Hill, Alonso and Heikki Kovalainen all reaching the top step of the podium for the very first time right here. The Hungaroring, it's like Monaco without the boats, although the boats today could come in very handy. 14 corners, 6 to the left and 8 to the right, and some very tricky corners to deal with. These rainy conditions out there aren't going to help either, so it's very likely we'll see a safety car or two during today's race. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. Fernando Alonso lines up on pole position, just ahead of George Russell, who starts this event from P2. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Norris, Hamilton, Senna, Verstappen, Stroll, Joker, Gasly, Albon, Leclerc, Sainz, Tsunoda, Ocon, Oscar Piastri, Hülkenberg, Théo Pourchaire, Bottas, Joe, Sargent, Perez, and Daniel Ricciardo fills the last spot on the grid. And with lights out just moments away, it's time to go down to the track. So I'm sure there'll be plenty to talk about this afternoon, and who's going to talk about it with us? None other than Naomi Schiff. Hi, Naomi. Now, sadly, things didn't work out for them last time. It was a bad race. Question is, though, can they recover today?
It is true, they had a really tough day in the office last time out, but they cannot dwell on that. It's so important to turn the page and start on a blank slate, because the more you dwell on that, the less it's going to push you in the right direction. So take some notes. Obviously, there's things to be learned, but move on.
Right, mate, I know it's your home Grand Prix, but I want you to treat it like any other race. Let's not make any unnecessary risks, please. The energy stores depleting, reducing our overall capacity. The more charge you hold, the faster that capacity will drop. That's a decent start. Good job. No tyre concerns at the moment, just focus on the driving. Okay, heavy rain will be staying with us for a while now, at least a 20-minute window of heavy rain. You might experience some understeer now that you're in the wake of the car ahead. Try to get past as soon as possible. Russell has just put up the fastest lap of the race so far. Russell has just put up the fastest lap of the race so far. Gap to your teammate ahead, 1.8 seconds. Car behind is dropping back by about 0.3 a lap. Well done. Tyre condition still looking good. conditions don't look like they're shifting, we're predicting at least 20 minutes of heavy rainfall. Job. That was the fastest lap of the race so far. Right, the gap to the teammate ahead of us. 1. Yellow flag. Okay, be aware there's an incident in the next part of the track. No overtaking through the yellow flags. Right, drop your speed. Our delta's too low and we're going to risk a penalty. Slow your pace immediately. Okay, VSC ending. We're going green. Maintain positive delta until the green flags. Still not a perfect situation, but I don't think we've got cause to move on to a different tyre yet. No need to worry about the tyre condition for now, everything's looking good. Use your overtake button more. It's time to utilise some of this energy. Come on. Box, we're coming in this lap. Okay, pit in this lap, and remember the speed limit. We'll be penalised if we exceed it. Keep that in mind as you approach.
And it looks like the pit crew are out in the lane and ready to perform their magic on the car. They're going to be aiming to achieve the fastest pit stop time possible.
Okay, stay clear of the white line on the exit. We'll receive a penalty for dangerous driving if you cross onto the track. So you know, we're getting some strange readings from a couple of the sensors. I don't think you need to be worried, just some bad data. So keep doing what you're doing. I'll let you know if we notice any genuine problems. Okay, the car ahead is 3 seconds up on you. Keep pushing. Ayrton's coming in for his stop now. Sonoda is stopping now. You're running low on ERS. Reminder that you can play around with ERS modes in the MFD or lift sometimes and ease onto the brake pedal for some manual recharge. pace is strong, but be aware these tyres need to go the distance. Okay, here's the gap that we're trailing the car ahead by. 4.7 seconds. The tyre situation's an interesting one, but I think the right call is to stick with what we've got for now. Okay, no issues with tyre wear for now. Keep taking care of them. Okay, so heavy rainfall here to stay for a while. Doesn't look like it's moving on anytime soon. Okay, gap to the car ahead, 4.3 seconds. Great work, that's a new fastest lap of the race. okay, you're catching the car ahead, but remember, we need to get to the end of the race on these tyres. car behind started to drop back. There's a gap beginning to form. Let's make the most of it. No tyre concerns at the moment, just focus on the driving. Okay, gap to the car in front, 1.6 seconds. The circuit's definitely looking better than it was a few minutes ago. If we could just move a bit more of that standing water, we might be able to go on to the intermediates. Okay, slow down, slow down. Your delta's negative, which means you're going too fast. Reduce your pace. Virtual safety car is ending. Maintain your pace until we get the green flags. VSC ending. Wait for the greens. Radar suggests that this heavy rain will be with us for a while now. We're starting to catch the car in front, but we need to look after the tyres. We won't be making another pit stop. Okay, so we're leading our teammate by 8.6 seconds. Okay, gap ahead, 1.6 seconds. car behind is dropping back by about 0.3 a lap. Well done. And gap to the car in front, 2.1 seconds. Okay mate, this is the final lap of the race. Final lap. Yes, great drive, great drive. Everyone here is really happy with that performance. Well done, mate.
We've seen a brilliant display of the Russell hustle. It's George Russell who wins.
What a true show of character to fight through the grid the way they did, to not get beat down by starting so far down, and to come back and win it all. Just goes to show how strong this driver is.
After an excellent performance at the Grand Prix, I'm sure there'll be plenty of celebrations tonight amongst the Mercedes team, and they certainly deserve it. Well, that was certainly an exciting weekend of Formula One. Be sure to join us for more exciting Formula One action very soon.